Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's training. I'm looking forward to our conversation today. If you don't know me already, my name is Ashley Perl, and I am a trauma-informed somatic healing coach. So I essentially help people achieve their goals in a sustainable way, achieve a way of being in a sustainable way, and I do this through strengthening the mind-body connection. The body being the soma. The body, the Greek word for a body is soma. And somatic work, we not only focus on mindset or thinking and talking, we really focus on healing from the inside out. And today we're going to talk about the topic of intergenerational trauma. When I work with clients, whether they're wanting to heal anxiety or overcome self-confidence and self-worth issues, or maybe there's patterns of stress and addiction, really a whole myriad of things, we can often see that the patterns that they're coming to work on can actually be traced back from generation to generation. They can maybe see similar patterns in their parents' parents, and kind of see the thread, so to speak. And not only that, but we also come to find that certain beliefs, certain patterns, certain ways of being that someone experiences today actually might happen in response to something that they didn't even personally experience in their lifetime. And I know that might sound like, whoa, what are you talking about? But don't worry, we're going to dive into it. But yeah, this is why we're here. And I know that the topic of trauma in itself can maybe seem a little bit heavy. And I promise you that this information is going to be eye-opening at the very least, hopefully supportive and beneficial to you. And in all the work that I do, even though sometimes we talk about the deep stuff, some stuff that maybe is a little bit taboo or hush-hush to talk about, I like to bring all this stuff out in the open, because it's when we bring all this stuff out into the open and hold those dark things with a little bit of lightness to it, is when we can really heal from it and make a difference in our lives and the lives of others. So today what we're going to talk about, one, what is intergenerational trauma? Maybe something you have or have not heard before. Two, why even focus on, healing it? Like, what does that actually look like and mean, and what's possible when we do this? And then lastly, how do we begin? If you're someone who's interested in this work, where to start? Okay, and just know that this topic, I could talk about this for hours and hours. We are definitely not going to cover an exhaustive overview, but we are going to go over some really key elements, providing you with a great place to at least begin. Okay, so I want to first just begin with a brief personal story. About 5 years ago, my bubby Rose passed away, and she was one of the matriarchs of our family. She was a Holocaust survivor. In fact, all 4 of my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. And when my family all gathered for her Shiva, mind you, I have a huge family, and this was really the first time in my adulthood that everyone was coming together and was able to really connect in a meaningful way. I started to notice a lot of common themes in my conversations with my family. Some similar threads of anxiety that everyone experienced in the same way, similar fears, similar worries about the world, even physical ailments that I saw. The same digestive issues, the same blood pressure issues, the same ulcers, and you name it, okay? Not to give too much away about my family's history, but maybe you're resonating, and the list goes on, okay? Even some behavioral stuff, like the relationships that they had with their siblings, our parents, the way that we grew up, a lot of commonalities that I saw. And this was really big for me. This was big for a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons was that up until that point, I had spent so much of my life thinking that my struggles were unique to me. That my struggles were, I should have been so ashamed of my struggles that I didn't tell anybody. I kind of suffered in silence. I didn't let anybody know what I was going through. And I thought that it was only me that experienced this stuff. And so when I realized, wow, this isn't just me, and when I kind of looked at some other, friends and their families and the situations were different, I realized, wow, this really isn't just a coincidence. And that term, it runs in the family. Yes, it does. But I knew that there was something deeper here, much, much deeper. And this is really where my interest in generational healing began. I started looking at research papers and reading books and dissertations and really nerding out on this stuff and realizing, wow, this really isn't just a coincidence. But the most important thing that I realized was that just because this ran in the family didn't mean that it had to stay in the family. And it was going to stay in the family until someone took it upon themselves to change, to shift, to heal. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So why even bring our focus on this today? First, all humans are wired for connection. We're wired for love and for meaning and for joy. That's our natural state. And you can even, find this in Jewish literature and books and all of the things. Now, some of us experience the symptoms of trauma in a way that, maybe it shows up in your relationships, it shows up in your family, it shows up with your husbands and wives and parents and children and what have you. And you might not even realize that it's because of trauma that's been inherited from generation to generation that you experience this, that you experience perhaps struggle and disconnection, perhaps fears, anxieties, compulsive behaviors, addictions, like all of this and more that can impact your life and the lives of anyone that you interact with, your families, etc. It can pull you away from, the presence that you experience in life, the connection that you get to have with your family, with your children. The list goes on. And what I see happening is that there's so much stigma around mental health. There's so much stigma and even pressure for people to present themselves in a way where, everything's perfect, everything's fine, our family's perfect, our lives are perfect, and let's take the Instagrammable social media photo, when really there's more that's happening. And I think because we think that it's only us, right? Kind of going back to my earlier story, we think that we're the only ones that are experiencing this, that we're so afraid to even name it or bring it to our awareness or bring it to the surface that we don't end up healing it, right? The shame or the shame can just be so strong that we don't even bring it to the surface. And then what happens? The problem perpetuates, the cycles perpetuate, the patterns continue. And this is where the intergenerational patterns continue to get passed down, when in reality that couldn't be further from the truth. All of us experience these things in our lives. All of us experience some form of struggle in some way. And wouldn't it be amazing to just bring this to light so that we can change it? So first and foremost, my intention is to help destigmatize mental health struggles, help destigmatize and recognize that just because you're experiencing something doesn't mean that it's just happening to you, and you're also not alone, okay? And I want to invite you into not only self-compassion, but compassion for anyone around you who is going through something. And then second, I want to invite you to, recognize that your experience in this lifetime, it may not be your fault. Your anxiety might not be your fault. The struggles you have, maybe the struggles with food or body image or compulsive behaviors, it might not actually be your fault, but it is your opportunity to heal and clear it in this lifetime, not just for you, but for your children, for your friends, for your family, for generations to come. Because the work that you do really has a ripple effect and an impact on so much more than you can even imagine. And then lastly, why I want to share in this particular space, the beautiful OKclarity community that is so incredible. Let's zoom out a second. Let's zoom out of your own unique experience and consider the Jewish community as a whole. Think about maybe some of the core values of Judaism, loving kindness, supporting one another, returning to wholeness and order and connection with our Creator, to one another. trauma, quite literally, because of its nature, creates disorder in our bodies, in our nervous systems, in our lives, in our relationships. It quite literally pulls us away from wholeness because we get stuck in these survival mechanisms. And it can be isolating, and it could take us away from the connection that we're meant to have in this lifetime. So in embracing healing, in doing, the work to return to your wholeness and realign with your natural nature, you're essentially reconnecting to your, innate wholeness and joy and peace and kindness. And you actually have spaciousness to really uphold all the Jewish values that we're meant to in this lifetime. And I truly believe that in doing this work, we contribute to the changing, in a positive trajectory, the direction that our community is going to. The Jewish people as a whole, we've had our fair share of traumatic experiences. We've had our fair share of persecution in this lifetime. And yes, that's our stories. That's the experiences that we've inherited quite literally in our bodies. But that doesn't have to be the story that we continue to play out, and we can continue to, heal on a collective level as well, and build up that generational resilience. Okay. So let's define, what is intergenerational trauma? This is quite literally trauma that gets passed down from generation to generation. This can be psychological, this can be behavioral, this can be environmental and social. So there's a lot of different ways that this can happen. But if you think about, quite literally the traumatic experiences that maybe your parents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents experienced, those experiences get passed down in the biology. So you might have that within your body, your genetics today, right? It's very interesting to think about. And if I'm looking over here, just because I want to make sure I don't miss anything, just so you know. So when someone experiences trauma, their physiology in their body changes. The study of epigenetics proves this, that the genetic expression actually changes. And that can be a really positive thing, because just in the same way that it changes and you can inherit something traumatic, we can also shift moving forward and change things so that those patterns don't continue to perpetuate. Okay? So let's pull from the real example that I gave earlier. Okay, our Holocaust example, which is something I think everyone here knows and can understand. If someone experienced the firsthand horrors of the Holocaust, the trauma, the fear that quite literally changed the physiology in their nervous system, in their bodies, they might pass that on genetically. They might pass on a heightened stress response, meaning staying in the sympathetic survival nervous system, to their children. So a lot of people are born and just have anxiety. Okay, this isn't all just learned. This is something that can be inherited as well. Not only anxiety, but, worry, control issues, even obsessive compulsive disorder, all of this stuff can be traced back. So that's kind of some of the physiological stuff, but even some of the behavioral stuff. Often survivors they didn't always talk about what they experienced because it was just too horrible to repeat. They wanted to, just rebuild the Jewish community. They wanted to just continue to live their lives and not think about what had happened, which makes sense. Of course it makes sense. However, what we know to be true about, trauma and emotions is that they get stored in the body. And so some of these traumatic experiences, our grandparents or great-grandparents or parents, they weren't able to fully move through the traumatic experiences. They weren't able to fully clear it out of their systems. And this is some of the basics of somatic work, is that this stuff truly gets embedded into our system. And until someone clears it out, it'll stay there, and it'll continue to impact the way we act, how safe we feel in the world, our comfortability with trying new things, with vulnerability, with even expressing our emotions. We could go on and on about this in this one example, but I just really want to give an overview and something that you can connect to. So that's a little bit of the, behavioral, but there's so much more. There's so much more to this. Even like the stress response or your health, your immunity, all of that gets impacted by trauma. And so oftentimes we experience things in this lifetime and we don't know, like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? And I truly believe that anything that we experience is an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity for us to heal it. And so take a moment and maybe consider some of the behavioral elements that you experienced, growing up. You can look at, what are the common behaviors in your family? Does everyone have similar relationships with one another? Are emotions expressed fully? What was their relationship to food, and eating? How were women treated? What was affection like and expressing love, growing up? All of these things we can kind of take a look at. And now consider that against what your desired experience is. What do you desire your relationship to your emotions to be? To food? How do you desire to experience, food? What do you desire your relationship with your significant other to be like, or your children, or trying new things? And if there's a difference between your desired experience and what you're currently experiencing, then perhaps there's an opportunity to dig a little deeper and to move into the next stage, which is healing. And I invite you to just have self-compassion as you're exploring this, wherever you are on this journey, okay? Just trust where you're at. What does it mean to actually heal? What does it mean to heal? Healing is the process of really looking at and working through the parts of yourself that pull you away from your desired way of being, from your connection, from your joy, from your inner peace, from your spontaneity, you can insert so many words here, okay? And, I don't need to go into detail about how anxiety and fear and addiction, etc., pulls us away from this, but I do want to share steps on where to begin, how to actually heal, how to begin this process. So step one, we're already doing it together, is to become aware. Is to become aware that though there might be things that you experience that aren't necessarily your fault, they are your opportunity. And perhaps you're like me and you're someone who is very attuned to, the emotions, the experiences of others, and you desire for everyone to be happy, to be joyful, to be fulfilled. And you can see that there's certain things that are pulling people away from that or pulling you away from that. So awareness is step one, okay? Looking at your life, and of course with kindness and compassion, knowing that there's reasons why we are the way we are, but beginning to see this stuff as like an opportunity. Moving from maybe the victim mentality, which I know I was in for a long time, moving from the why is this happening to me into the why is this happening for me? And how can you see you doing the work as something that's not only going to impact you and your lived experience in this lifetime, but the experience of your loved ones, your children, generations to come. It's incredible, okay? Really, really beautiful. And so when we post this, I'll give some, recommendations written out, but teachers that I have learned so much from, Gabor Mate, his books, all of his podcasts, anything from Gabor Mate. Rabbi Tirza Firestone, her book, Wounds into Wisdom, incredible. Both of them, Gabor is a first-generation survivor, and Tirza is a second-generation survivor of the Holocaust. Incredible, incredible stories, okay? So awareness, just start to learn about this. Next, once you have awareness, you can actually move into some action, actually move into the healing. And, as a trauma-informed practitioner, I can tell you that so much of human suffering and so much of our inability to heal comes from the fact that we try to heal up here without actually starting at the root, without actually starting at a nervous system level. If your nervous system is wired for survival mode, which a lot of people live unknowingly in, and this leads to so many anxiety issues, so many digestive issues. Once anxiety is left and you don't do anything about it, a lot of unhealed emotionality becomes physical illness. And so I share this to just, invite you to explore what's arising for you. If we're in survival mode, if our body's living in that sympathetic survival mode, we can't thrive. We can't focus on anything else because our body is just focused on survival. So invitation to explore, nervous system work. Somatic work is beautiful for this. Breath work is beautiful for this. Partnering with trained professionals is really, really helpful for this. And then once your nervous system is in a place where it can actually breathe a little bit, where, you can start looking at your behaviors, your beliefs about the world, that parts of yourself that you might want to shift, this is where you can, receive the support of loved ones, of a coach, of a therapist. I just invite you to really work with someone who you don't just talk about these things with, but you actually get to the root so that you can heal from within. Okay? So those are just such a few steps you can start with. And I want to just leave you with this visual, okay? I love this visual of, think about a chain. And sometimes we can be so zeroed in on our lives and, what our experiences in this lifetime and making the most of our one life. But your life is one life in like a chain of many, many lives that is interconnected and interwoven with the lives of your ancestors, your grandparents, your, children, or, other family members. Just your life is so meaningful. And the work that you do, the healing work that you do in this lifetime doesn't only impact you. It has such a vast ripple effect that the magnitude you can't even really understand. And so I share all this information today to invite you to consider, maybe you're the person who is meant to start shifting these patterns in your family. Maybe you're the person who, gets to treat your spouse or your children or your loved one differently. Maybe you're the person that gets to bring this information to your family, to your community, to your friends, so that we can heal collectively and change the trajectory in which not only your lives go, but the Jewish community as a whole. There's so much beautiful work that can be done here. So I'll let you chew on that. What role do you get to play in all of this, in your life, in the lives of others, and in the spaces and communities that you take part in? Okay, so just for listening to all of this, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work. And I hope to see you on our next training in a couple of weeks. Reach out, say hi if you have any questions. My Instagram handle is @AshleyDawnPerl, AshleyDawnPerl. Ashley Dawn Perl, no A in Pearl. And I'll link everything in our post when this gets uploaded in a couple of minutes, okay? Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you on the next training. Bye-bye.